Okay. So thank you very much, class. Good morning again. We have doing literature review as a class right now. We are going to discuss how to write, academic writing, how to write. Hopefully we can be able to finish this one within the next 30 minutes to 40 minutes. This is not a very long session. So we talked about how to find literature. We have talked about theories. We have talked about um, doing reference. But how do you then write? How do you write? How do you review literature and write? So analyzing the literature review, structuring the review, and then good and bad review. Okay. Now we are looking, that good takes us back to chapter 3 again. So we'll be looking into chapter 3 of our book. Please, if you have not been able to get the book, don't wait till the time is up, and then you'll be asking yourself that why will you get the book? Please get it as soon as possible. Okay, so when we began last week, we said that literature review is a synthesis of available resources and materials with a strong relation with the topic. That is what we did last week. Now we are going to do that accompanied by a description and a critical evaluation and analysis of each work. So we have two things there. Accompanied by descriptive writing and analytical writing. That's what it means. Accompanied by descriptive writing and analytical writing. So what are these two types of writings? Accompanied by descriptive writing and analytical writing. What are these types of writing? That's what we're doing today. Now, the concept about literature review is like a chapter in your structure of your long essay, but itself as an activity, as a product, is a chapter of your literature, your chapter 2. But as an activity process, it's you do it throughout the whole long essay. Because every time you will review literature, comparing, contrasting literature, discussing literature, describing literature, you'll be doing that. So as an activity, you'll be doing that in chapter 1, you'll be doing that in chapter 2, part of chapter 3, maybe some anecdotal literature or information you have from the Bank of Ghana website, or studies you may have from the industry, you may discuss it there. Research methodology, discuss the justification of the research. You may use literature. Discussion, you compare your results with the literature. Conclusion, you one or two literature may be mentioned there. So throughout your literature is very, very important. Literature, the act of review is important. Descriptive and analytical writing, there are two types of writings. Descriptive writing likes to summarize what people have said without passing judgment on it or giving any deeper meaning. So by the time you finish reading somebody's descriptive writing, you have come to understand, oh, what is it about? What did they cover? That's all. But analytical writing tries to compare one person's work with another person's work, tries to pass judgment and prevent a view, try to even look for weaknesses in a person's argument. So when you look at descriptive writing, people usually say somebody did this, somebody did that, somebody did that. But when you look at analytical writing, the person will say that there seems to be an agreement, there seems to be a perspective. While this person compares with this other one, so there's a comparison, there is a synthesis that comes with a conclusion or comes with a summary of what somebody, 2 people or 3 people have said. So when you look at analytical writing, you see more authors there than compared to the descriptive writing. For example, this is an example of descriptive writing. A study by Uche 2000 on unemployment in banking industry in Nigeria highlighted that inflation affected turnover of banks, which also had an effect on salary payment. About 2,000 bank employees lost their jobs at the end of 1999. That is a descriptive writing. I just described in the word was in Uche's work. Then it goes on. Takumi discussed that lack of capital for startup initiatives and high interest rates on loans stalled entrepreneurial ventures and contributed to unemployment or the lack of job opportunities. In a recent study on unemployment in Egypt, Salia found political instability, poor governance, and lack of foreign direct investment to be critical factors influencing unemployment. All of them are independent summaries of the papers, independent summaries. There is no attempt to link them together. There's no attempt to compare them. They are all standing on their own, independent sentences. They are talking about the same thing, independent sentences, all of them. So descriptive writing, usually you see them as independent sentences, independent, and that try to describe what is in a paper. There's no comparison with any other paper. There's no attempt to link one paper to the other. All of them are on their own. But when you come to analytical writing are different types. This is a chronological analytical writing. Now, this person is trying to look at how something has changed over time. So he starts by an open sentence, which is more of a summary of what he's coming to say. Literature demonstrates that the key factors that contribute to unemployment in Africa have tended to change over time. This is a summary statement. This is a summary statement that is making an inference from other readings he has done. So when he says that statement, he said, where is the evidence for that statement? In the late 1990s, now you said it's a have tended to change over time, so you have to prove it. So in the late 1990s, researchers argued that inflation and low wages contribute to unemployment. So if you look at the bracket there, the bracket has the parenthesis for the bracket has when I'm muting, it's a person on mute again. It's very interesting. Has Uche and Benson as two papers that have been put together. So you see that the two papers tend to attest to the statement that was placed, argued on the late 1990s. So the two papers are attesting to that. Then he goes on to, for example, illustrating from the two papers there, which is what? A study by Uche of 2000, Uche 2000 on unemployment in the banking industry in Nigeria highlighted that inflation affected the turnover of banks, which also had an effect in salary payments. Over 2,000 bank employees lost their job at the end of 1999. Now, what do you see here? The first part is just a summary of the two, brings a summary of two papers together. And he said that in the late 1990s, researchers, and who are the researchers? Benson and Uche. Then he illustrates one. So you see that there's an argument that is placed across. There's illustration that is done, and there's evidence. So there's evidence in the reference here. Then there's illustration of one of the evidences. Illustration here. So there's argument. Researchers argue that inflation wages contributed to unemployment. Who are those researchers? Uche and Benson. Then he goes on to say that, for example, an illustration. Illustration helps us have insight into what was said by Benson, Uche, because we don't know what was actually done in their studies, but we know that a summary was being put across. But when we illustrate, it helps enhances understanding. On the other hand, by 2004, why? Because in the 1990s, in the 1990s, he gave the first one because it has tended to change over time. So he has now shown over time. On the other hand, by 2004, researchers, he has said it again, researchers. So who are those researchers? Describe that lack of capital for startup initiatives, and high interest rates on loans. Lack of capital for startup initiatives and high interest rates on loans stalled entrepreneurial ventures and contributed to unemployment or lack of job opportunities. That could 2005. That's one researcher. Then he goes on to a comparative study, that's in Kinsey 2006, on the SME industry in Ghana in Uganda shared similar findings, similar to Taku's study. So this one, he's summarizing Kinsey's study, but he's telling that it's similar to Taku's study. So similar findings on the effect of startup capital and in low interest rates on capital, on entrepreneurship and unemployment. So if you look at it carefully, there is a word called similar, which is linking the previous the Kinsey study to Taku's study. Then the other one too here, the paragraph above, is on the other hand, like he's just comparing what happened in 1990 to what is happening in 2004 on the other hand. So on the other hand is linking the next paragraph to the previous paragraph. Then it goes on to, in a recent study on unemployment in Egypt, Salia found. So why is this a recent study? If you look at the timing that she has been given, she gave 1990, then he gave 2004. He said recent study. So it's now linking to the word recent here is a timeline. It's a word that depicts a timeline in reference to the timeline that is being we are discussing. In a recent study, Sadia 2011 found political instability, poor governance, and lack of foreign direct investment to be critical factors influencing other studies in Cote d'Ivoire. And so attest to these findings. Which findings? The findings by Salia. So Cote d'Ivoire and Sierra Leone have also gone through some instabilities compared to the way Egypt has also gone through this in some time. So Cote d'Ivoire and Sierra Leone attest to the findings.
No.
Oh, please. The gentleman talking, you are disturbing us. Other studies in Cote d'Ivoire and Sierra Leone attest to these findings. That's by Johnson and Penn 2010. Then it concludes by saying that, in effect, unemployment in Africa may be viewed from a multi-factor or multifaceted perspective. It cannot be reduced to one single factor. The only way we're able to make that statement is because at the end of the day, we can prove to you that different factors have been put across. And we can be able to analyze and then draw out that it is a multi-factor issue. In the beginning, we stated it, that these are key factors which contribute to unemployment have tended to change over time. In the end, we said that those unemployment in Africa cannot be reduced to one factor. It is a multi-factor issue. It's a multi-factor phenomenon. And we have proved and shown over time, and we have been comparing. So when you see other studies to which other study, to other study. So you see that there's every time there is a summary. This study is a summary. This actually statement. A study by Uche up to here is a summary of what is in Uche's own. But what makes it analytical is a word for example. For example, links that one to the previous argument. For example. So what you see here is that when you are writing analytically, there is argument, there is evidence, and there is illustration. Argument, evidence, illustration. There's an argument, there's an evidence of where it is coming from, and there is an illustration of the evidence. The same thing is what you see here. And in my 2004, researchers discussed that who are the researchers? This one. Then illustrates another researcher here. That's Kinsey. So there's evidence, there's illustration. Salia found. Salia itself is an illustration, and yeah, also, but then it goes on to link it to other studies. There's a comparison here. We said literary review is accompanied by a description. Describe what is there. After describing what is there, compare with other people's work and critical evaluate it. Compare with other people's work and critical evaluate it. So that is an example of analytical writing. We are going to learn how to be able to do that. Now, descriptive writing just states what happened. Analytical writing identifies significance. Descriptive writing states what something is like. Analytical writing likes to evaluate and look at the weaknesses. Descriptive writing tells you the story so far. So Salia found. Critical writing weighs what Salia found with another person's work. Descriptive writing states the order in which things happen. In the late 90s, it said I've tended to change over time. We're just telling you how it happened. Then critical analytical writing makes reasoned judgment. What judgment did he make in the previous slide? What judgment did he make? In effect, unemployment in Africa may be viewed from a multifaceted perspective. It cannot be reduced to a single factor. That is analytical writing. It makes reasoned judgment. Okay. Descriptive writing says how to do something. Analytical writing argues a case according to evidence. Descriptive writing explains what the theory says. Critical writing and analytical theory will show why it is relevant. Descriptive writing will explain how something works. Descriptive writing and analytical writing will explain why it works. Descriptive writing will note the method used. Analytical writing will tell you why that method is important for somebody to work or suitable for the work that is being done. Descriptive writing will say when something occurs. Analytical writing talks about why the timing is important. So you can't just be writing descriptively, you have to write analytically too. That's what you need to be able to know how to do. Now, analytical writing, analyzing and writing starts from two main series: evaluating the source and analyzing the source. What do you mean by evaluating the source? When somebody writes something and puts it there, you have to ask yourself, where is it from? Can I accept it? Why was it written? Is it something that will be relevant for my master's or my long essay or the assignment I'm doing? Who wrote it? Is it a bias? For example, if you're picking something from a Vodafone report, you can only say Vodafone claims something. But if you're picking from NCA, you can say NCA reports that Vodafone is 30% penetration. The reason is that if it's coming from that same person who's an organization, you have to be very careful because you have no means of verifying. So you say a Vodafone claims. But if it's coming from the industry authority, you can say the industry authority like NCA reports. So who wrote this? Why did they write it? How did they get their data? How did they come to conclusions? When did they do the work? Is it likely to be too old? So sometimes you have to be very careful. I tell students that if you're writing your research problem, for example, try to stay in the last 10 years, because if you take it too late, it's too old, it's likely that some people have done something to it. Somebody may have done some work to supersede the work that you are quoting or citing. What else do you know? Does it support or contradict other sources of evidence? So you need to be able to ask yourself that, what you are reading? Is there any other perspective of the issue? Then we don't expect you to read from only one literature source. You can't only read from one journal of financial crime, only that one. No. Even though you are doing something on cybercrime or financial crime, there may be other papers which are publishing outside the journal of financial crime. You can't always only take for only Ghanaian authors. You have to look at other authors from different perspectives, different countries, so they can build a richer picture and a richer understanding of the issue you're studying. Even your supervisor could have published with other people from different parts of the world. So you may need to also look at other countries, not just Ghana papers. And then different evidence types. Sometimes you may pick journal articles, which should be about 70% of your work. Then you may add on to, from the journal articles, you may add books, periodicals, government statements to be able to justify some of your arguments. And we also want different perspectives, like you saw me talking about how things have changed over time. About Salia's work, about Taku's work, about another person, Uche's work, Benson's work, all of them to build a balanced view of how unemployment factors have changed over time. I can't just take Salia's view and then take one person's view. If I take Salia's view, I'll just have only 3 variables, which are all about more recent variables. But there were other variables that predict unemployment in the past. Loan interest rates, all those things were coming up in the past, but they may not be relevant to the countries that have political instability, like Cote d'Ivoire, like Egypt, but they could also in Sierra Leone, but it could be relevant to another country. So you need to be able to draw from different perspectives. So that's what we call triangulation. Triangulation, draw from different sources, draw from different years. You can't only pick works from 1 year. Sometimes I might tell students to have good works coming from 2020, 2021, but sometimes very relevant works can also be 2018, 2019. So these things are very, very important. Somebody asked the question, so how many literature should I have? Okay. I tell students that for every 50 words, you have at least one unique reference. Every 50 words, you have at least one unique reference. So if you state something, a statement, you have a reference underneath. If you state another statement, another reference can come. So, or before another reference, you repeat another reference. So every 50 words, at least have one reference. So if you're writing 400 words, 50 divided by 4 is 8. So at least in 400 words, you need about 8 good references. But that means 8 unique references. Then you can have others which are repeated, others which are used. So you may end up having about 12 or 15 references in 400 words. That's if you are doing a very thorough work. Yeah. But it depends on what you are writing. If you are writing your research problem in 400 words, you may have at least 8 different references. Now, the references, let me show you something about references. The references, some of them may be primary reference, some of them may be secondary reference, some of them may be third-party reference. Okay. So you have got the primary reference, very valuable reference of high value, of medium value, and of low value. Okay. Now look at the reference which are of high value. Which is reference of high value, because you're going to illustrate it in your work. Illustrate high value. Kingston, high value. Salia, high value. Because those ones you summarize and illustrate in your work. Medium value reference can be used to support a work. Like Uche's work is supported by Benson. So Uche's work, Taku's work was used to support this particular statement. So it can either be high value or medium value. So medium value and high value I use here. But so even though Salia's work is of high value, look at the statement. Other studies in Cote d'Ivoire and Sierra Leone attest to these findings. These are just others. I didn't illustrate any of them. So they are either medium or they are low value. I'm just adding to show that I've read enough and I'm showing other countries. Remember, the thing is a long essay. So if you don't read wide and have more reference, you write a short essay. It's a long essay, and your long essay usually 60 pages, roughly around 10,000 to 12,000 words, 60 pages, double spacing. So you can't write less than 60 pages, including your questionnaire and everything is about 60 pages. So if you are fond of just writing one statement and just using a high value statement, it doesn't help. The only way you can show analytical writing is that you are comparing. He said, accompanied by a description, which is what is a description, and a comparative analysis and a critical evaluation and a comparative analysis. So you critically evaluate. Uche said this one. Who is the person who agrees with Uche? So I'll find out somebody. Benson and Uche. Benson agrees with Uche. And then I'll ask you comparative analysis. To demonstrate comparative analysis, I'll put Benson in the bracket. So now you can see Uche and Benson. Then when I critically evaluated and summarized, I knew that the two researchers are saying that inflation where low wages contributed to unemployment. So to be able to write, I may have read Uche's work, and I found somebody who compares with positively with Uche, that is Benson. And after finding Benson, I look at the two and combine them and summarize and say that researchers argue that or have argued that inflation and low wages contribute to unemployment. And I put a full stop. I bring Uche and Benson there. Then I say illustration of one so that you can know that what I'm saying is true. You can have an understanding of what I'm saying. I go and illustrate Uche's own. Secondly, on the other hand, 2004, researchers discussed that the lack of capital for startup initiative and interest rates on loans. So this one is a summary coming from TACO. But somebody has done a comparison. Somebody has done a similar study, Kinsey. I compared the two. Salia to the same thing, but I picked up Sierra Leone and then Cote d'Ivoire. So Sierra Leone and Cote d'Ivoire are the low and medium related work. The high ranking work or the high value work, which I illustrate, is the Salia's work. But the other ones help me to build understanding. Okay. So I will not just pick evidence from one source. I can pick from different sources so that I can get a balanced view. So if you look at some people's writing and their arguments, sometimes they may bring statistics from different places. Let me just show you an example. So let's take this paper that we know from accounting. That'll be the fastest, easiest one I can show you without. Okay, if you look at this paper, look at the beginning of the paper. If you realize, those of you can remember, look at it. In the success of small business, the success of small business is relevant for any country, given their impact on the economy. In the USA, businesses employing fewer than 500 employees accounts for half of the economy, half of the country's economy and half of its private sector. This is coming from the Small Business Administration. So it's actually coming from a practitioner document, an industry document. We see similar findings can be observed around the world. So this is Aldrich. IFC is International Finance Corporation. OECD is also an international body. So these are all international bodies into finance and into development. Then Austrich's article is also coming from as a report. So you see, Austrich is Aldrich is coming from a report. Then let's say IFC is also coming from a report from the IFC, and then we see OECD is also coming from a report. So you see, I hope you see the two. All of them are used to support the industry discussions the person put across there. Now, when you go to the academic ones there, then in defining small business, you pick the 1, 2 for small business here. Accounting discipline has limited and understanding of how accounting practices are introduced in small business. Fakona and Reed. So if you look at the Fakona and Reed, problems and challenges and opportunities. The small business as a setting of management accounting research. Management accounting research is the name of the journal. Volume 11, this is Harvard Star referencing. Volume 11 and number 4, pages 385 to 390. Do you see that? Now, Feltham, which we also see earlier. Gomez, which is talking about the theory of socio-emotional wealth, is also coming from the Academy of Management Annals, which is a high-ranking journal. So sometimes we check by looking at what kind of things are you referring to. So you are seeing that the student is not just using academic work, it's using also practitioner work, but using them at specific places. Although the success of small firms depends on many factors, both external and internal. The implementation of sound academic practice is crucial for any firm survivor. Collins and Jarvis, 2002. Leachy, 1998, 1981. McMahon, 2001. McMahon and Holmes, 1991. Falconer and Reed, 2002. So you see, he's drawing from different studies. Collins and Jarvis, Journal of Small Business and Enterprise. So you see, that's also good. That's a very good journal in that area. So we are seeing that the journal that matters, Management Accounting Research Journal is there, Journal of Small Business and Enterprise Development is there. So the journal that matter to the area of study are even referenced in the work. Journal of Family Business Strategy the Myers and Kota. So you see that one is captured there. Management accounting research. So how will it happen that you're writing about accounting and all the journal you're using, journal of fishing harbors, unless it's still talking about family businesses in terms of fishing, then okay. But journal of fishing harbors has nothing, if it has nothing to do, or you're talking about technologies for fishing, it has nothing to do with your work. It may not be important for you to bring it here. So please be very careful of how you pick materials for your study. Okay, let's continue. So you evaluate and bring different perspectives to get a balanced view. Now let's look at another one. Social networking is increasingly becoming a phenomenon in the social and business lifestyle of employees. Okay, so this statement is coming from the author, but he has put an argument there. You say it's becoming a phenomenon. Where is the evidence? Statistics from the 2011 Force Report on Social Networking and Business stated that 85% of workers in America spend a minimum of 30 minutes of working hours to visit social networking websites. So this is coming from the US. So he's looking at something that's happening in the US. Then he goes, and these statistics are not too far from that of Africa. As a recent study in South Africa also found 70% of South African workers interviewed browse Facebook during working hours. So you see, the argument is built from South Africa and America. And they all is what he has summarized here, saying that social networks increasingly becoming a phenomenon. So the argument was put across, the statistics was brought here as evidence and illustration at the same time. But the illustration he didn't illustrate only from the US, he also illustrated from Africa. He could have illustrated from Africa straight from the beginning, but he wanted to write more. So he wanted to show that the thing that he's trying to study is not something that is only in Africa, but it's also something that pertains to the North America. So he did those two. Then again, beyond the consent, then again is a statement, a hook phrase that's linking this statement, this paragraph to the other paragraph, the paragraph below to the paragraph above. This statement to these statistics are not too far from that of Africa. It's a statement that is also linking this paragraph, this sentence to this sentence. Otherwise, the sentences alone on their own are hanging sentences. It is the sentences that the phrases you put in that links the sentences together. So we use them as hook phrases. So you put a hook phrase to link one sentence to another, one descriptive sentence to another descriptive sentence. Statistics from the 2011 Force Report is a description of what is the Force Report. A recent study in South Africa is also a description of what is a South African report. What joins the two sentences together is these statistics are not too far from that of Africa. That is what makes analytical writing. Then what joins makes sense from all the two sentences, the two different illustrations together, America's illustration and South African illustration, is the first sentence. Social networking is increasingly becoming a phenomenon in the social and business lifestyle of employees. Then again, beyond the concern on the growth in the use of social networking platforms in the workplace, there have been concerns about implications it has on both employers and employees. That's another argument. You say there are concerns about, beyond the concern on the growth of the use of social networking platforms in the workplace. That is the summary of what's happened in the previous paragraph. So then again, despite what I've said in the previous paragraph, there are also concerns about implications social media has on employees and employers. Now, the first thing is that you said it has implications on employers and employees. So where is the implication? Show us the employees' implication, show us the employers. You need to illustrate, because I have argued, illustrate. While employers have been reported to requesting access passwords to employee accounts, that's the employers' issue. You want the passwords of employees. Others are exploring policies and strategies to leverage social media in marketing and sales. So the first one has to do with how employees are treating employers. How employers are treating employees by asking for their password to their social media accounts. The second one has to do with the fact that the employers themselves, they don't know how to leverage social media in marketing and sales. So these are the concerns in the workplace. The concerns about what are your employees doing online. I want to monitor it. So they should bring their passwords. And then the second concern goes on to how do you leverage social media for marketing and sales. So you see the differences that comes in here in terms of the writing. So before I can make that statement, I put the two segments together, the two illustrations together, and then I can make a statement to pass or to summarize the two, that there have been concerns about the implications it has on both employers and employees. So the first thing in analyzing a source, what are you looking for? Are you looking for some specific item data to or then do you have the data? Where will you get the data from? Are you going to get it from the literature that you have? Are you going to use that one to compare, or are you going to use that one to support something? If you're looking for conceptual model that can inform your research paper, which model are you going to use to explain the determinants of social determinants of internet banking adoption, for example? If you're looking for examples of use of particular research methods, are you looking for quantitative studies or qualitative studies? So these questions should come up. What are you looking for? What type of information are you looking for? Because the data you have may be plenty. Now that you have been able to identify what you're looking for, you have to make a statement that tends to summarize what is in the research, or that points out to where you are going. If you look at these two statements, social networks increasingly becoming a phenomenon in the social and business lifestyle of employees. It's a summary statement. This one today have been concerns about the implication it has on both employers and employees. It's a summary statement. All of them coming from other statements that were made that this add to that summary. So according to the best thing for the rubrics of writing, the first thing is that when you write, understand the different concepts you are coming across. What are the different concepts you are coming across? For example, in reading about the concerns of social media, I came across employee social media privacy, and then social media social sales and marketing in social media in terms of strategy. So to be able to make right, I'll have to create a sentence around the privacy issues and create a sentence around the marketing issues. And that's what I did. We did here. While some employees are reported to requesting access to passwords to employee accounts. That's one. And then others are exploring policies and strategies to leverage social media in marketing. So that's one. So for each of the chunk, create a topic sentence that synthesizes the literature to be discussed. Okay, so now the double sentence then becomes, there have been concerns about the implication it has on employers and employees. Those are the topic sentence I have. Therefore, each of the topic sentence, I can then support it with what I said. So what can I support it? I can support it with this one. Some employers have reported to requesting access password to employee accounts, California 2011, 2012. And others are exploring policies and strategies to leverage social media and marketing. And I give those references too. So those two come together to be able to support the statement I put across. So what you see here is that it's a summary of available material without, literature review is not a summary of available material without a critical description, any critical description component. It is going to be an argument, an evidence, and an illustration. When you just summarize, you are writing analytically, descriptively. But when you combine it with other statements, you are writing analytically. Now, this is what I am saying. I may be wrong. So let's go into a literature and check. Let's read people's papers. Okay, so now let's pick one paper here. Any paper at all. Look at this. Okay. The contribution of commercial poultry industry to food security has long been recognized. Sorry, let me just make it bigger. Has long been recognized by the United Nations and governments all over the world. Look at where you started. You're pitching at the United Nations and government all over the world. Before it comes to Africa. The last time you pitch it to America because we came to South Africa. So you pitch it. Sometimes in your opening paragraphs, try to write what we call geographically. Look at the issue globally or in some global nation which matter before you look at the Africa countries. That's what you have done here. So governments around the world, particularly those in Africa, this is an opening paragraph or your introduction to the work. So open chapter 1, introduction, you can write like this. Governments around the world, particularly those in Africa, have relied on food industry to generate revenue. Commercial poultry farms contribute to about 40% of Ghana's animal protein. Now he's illustrating from Ghana in the Africa. And then all the two come together to justify, recognized by the nations and governments all over the world. So governments have come. One government has come, Ghana's own. There is an extraordinary surge in demand for poultry, including meat and eggs. Urban growth in per capita income in Ghana. The studies about Ghana. So he went to the world, he came to Africa, he came to Ghana. Now he's settled on Ghana. Growth in per Capita income in Ghana from, okay, so the statistics are given, have contributed to a sharp rise in consumption of chicken from 1 kilo to 6 kilo. Now look at all the papers that are here. We see the paper that is here. There's every 50 words, I need this here. Every 50 words you see a reference. Mano et al. Kang et al. So every sentence is a reference there. For the past 20 years, 1999 to 2019, Ghana's domestic production has been less than twice its imports. So given again. Now let me jump again into another part of the work, because sometimes somebody will say that, Prof, you are giving the only this part, but show us another part. Let's see. However, these CPFs find it difficult to integrate internally. CSI is saddled with, if I use this one, we don't know, we didn't read through, so we don't know the definitions for these. Let me use another study. Okay. Let me pick something. Let's go to clinical governance, health. Let's look at the introduction and let's look at the literature review side and let's look at the conclusion. See different style of writing. Clinical governance is gaining recognition among health professionals and researchers worldwide. World again. Health care managers are investing in measures to improve quality of healthcare, improve quality of care, and safeguard high standards of care. Namai et al. 2015. CG refers to the, now is defined, to refer to measures adopted by health institutions to promote clinical quality and high standards through the creation of a supportive environment. It focuses on promoting clinical effectiveness, risk management. It's now defined this model already. Clinical audit, quality assurance, as well as research and capacity building through education and training. So he has given you the definition of CG without saying he's defining CG. He explains to you what CG is about. But look at what he said. CG is gaining recognition worldwide. CG bridges the gap between managerial and clinical approaches to quality care. Reference again. Effective implementation of CG enhances responsible and continuous improvement in the quality of care. It gives you this one again. Look at the papers he has mentioned here. It's been underscored that investing in measures to improve the quality of care enhances effective management of health institutions. Okay. In addition, adopting effective risk management and clinical audit measures enhances efficiency and reduces financial losses. Odella et al. Implement. So all this part is just explaining CG. Then it goes on to the gap era. CG has received much research attention in developed countries. Fadaza et al. However, little is known about the subject matter in sub-Saharan Africa, including Ghana. Poor quality care is a major concern in Ghana. In addition, healthcare workers in Ghana, including mental health workers, have embarked on a series of industrial actions. Now, all these are now practitioner work, combined with academic work. A series of actions largely due to poor conditions of service. Now, you see that he began with the world. He established the relevance of CG, came to developed country, came to South Africa before he came to Ghana. Long essay, you break it down logically. So he's writing what we call geographically. He was writing thematically, focusing on the theme CG. After explaining the theme, what CG is, and giving us the views of CG, now he came to write what we call demographically or geographically. He looked at developed countries, then went to Sub-Saharan Africa, and went to Ghana. When he entered into Ghana, now he is going to discuss the topic about CG in Ghana by focusing on issues concerning mental health and psychiatric hospitals. So he explains Ghana has only 3 mental health or psychiatric hospitals. So he's now focused on Ghana literature, just focus on Ghana literature, and goes on to talk about the government and other perspectives there. Now, review of theoretical and empirical literature here. Okay. Let me see whether. Okay, now look at this one too. However, the implementation of CG remains problematic. Previous studies identify multiple barriers to effective implementation of CG. Some reviewed. So now, previous study, he didn't bring any reference there. So we expect that the next sentence should be evidence of that argument. Previous studies identified. Where are the previous studies? Some 2005 revealed that the majority of doctors in the United Kingdom were less enthused about CG, coupled with little support. Therefore, doctors felt that this is summary. This is summary. Remember, summary was to summarize that descriptive writing. felt that there was inadequate stakeholder consultation during the implementation of CG. Wilkes and Boniface, 2004, found that health workers demonstrated a good understanding of CG. However, their participation in continuous professional development activity was low due to inadequate sources and poor leadership and management styles. It has also been found that the lack of shared goals on quality improvement among clinicians posed a challenge to successful implementation and then what to do. For successful implementation of CG. Now, the words that join the sentences together is, look at this, however. However, it's now, oh no, I don't think, however, their participation, no, this is not even the word. It has also been found, the word also rather. It also is joining them together. It's also. This, however, is for summarizing here. But before we began here, he made a statement. He made a statement in previous studies. So now he has to show all the previous studies. So now after showing the previous studies, goes to another paragraph. Further, the lack of good relationship between different cadres of health workers and non-involvement of clinicians in health services management pose a threat to CG implementation, suggesting that the participation and broader stakeholder consultation are crucial for effective implementation of CG. Evidence also suggests. So you see, all of what they are trying to do, they always bring references and they suggest from the references and give you information from the references. Look at this, other barriers. Healthcare, so Ravaji found health workers lack comprehensive understanding. No, even let me take my time. Evidence suggests that there is low awareness of CG among health professionals in developing countries. Who says it? For instance, illustration. Ravaji et al. Found that health workers lacked comprehensive understanding of the concept of CG. Health workers limited CG to continuous quality improvement, medical errors, and patient safety. Other barriers to the effective implementation of CG include other barriers. All this section, all this paragraph is about barriers of implementation of CG. Why? Because he said that the implementation of CG remains problematic. So he started by discussing the barriers. So this is also a set of barriers. This is also another set of barriers. So if you look at it carefully, the two paragraphs are thematic writings. Thematic writings are focusing on the theme of our barriers. But within the theme of barriers, I'm also comparing. I'm also doing critical discussions concerning it. In the quest, now let's solve the problem about barriers. In the quest to increase commitment of CG, stakeholders have argued there's a need to raise awareness among clinicians. There is also the need for supporting culture. This is another theme of addressing the barriers. So if you look at this page, the first one is about purpose of CG. The second one is about how CG was studied in developed countries. The third one is about however implementation of CG is problematic. The fourth one is further more about problematic. The fifth one, concluding the page, is about looking at how to address the problems. Then goes to methods. He has finished. So if you look at it very carefully, he has in a logical way presented this particular section of the literature review. Purpose, the review in the developed countries, the problems facing CG, the barriers of it, the barriers in two paragraphs, and the last one, how to address it. Now, if you look at the end of the work too, you can see similar types of writing again. Okay, what he's doing is discussion. Okay. On the contrary, quality assurance scored the lowest average positive response. The majority of respondents, this is data or findings, felt that hospitals have not adopted measures to promote the quality of care, patient safety, and medication safety, and health worker safety. This finding suggests that some pillars of CG are of less priority to managers of the hospitals. A similar study, what is it? The study that he has found is comparing with another study. I think the discussion is about comparing findings with other studies. So he's now comparing with another study. So a similar study in Iran found that healthcare managers demonstrate low interest in CG. That's Fadaza 2015. So if you go back to his name, find out some of the Fadaza 2015 papers that he mentioned earlier. What am I trying to say? Literature review is about argument, evidence, illustration, comparison. So you see argument, evidence, illustration, comparing literature together. So let's look at leadership in the public service. Okay. So you start with a quote. Although the concept of leadership has been contested over a past decade, Grint 97 and 2005, and then Tejeda 2001. Empirical evidence showed that transformation. Maybe you can't see. Let me zoom in. Sorry about that. Empirical evidence shows that transformation leadership characterizes an effective form of leadership at the organizational, sectorial, and national levels. Okay. For instance, illustration. Now look at where the for instance is coming from. It's coming from Jensari et al. 2016, Jensari et al. 2013. Look at the bracket here. Jensari 2016 is here. So it's illustrating with the one of the Jensari 2016. For instance, the preference and predisposition of employees to remain in the organization contribute enormously to workforce stability and organizational effectiveness. However, the decision is only feasible and pragmatic when employees feel satisfied with leadership style being practiced in the organization. For that reason, employees in both private and public organizations are more likely to remain with the organizations when managers instill in them pride and respect and trust them, treat them as individuals, and communicate high expectations with them, which are attributes of transformational leaders. Despite many studies linking transformational leadership to voluntary turnover, and it gives you a number of studies, about 7 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. The mechanisms and processes that mediate a relationship between the aforementioned constructs in one area is one area that researchers have grappled with over the past 2 decades. Besides, the previous research has examined if affective commitment and psychological climate as independent variables of voluntary turnover intention. It gives the references. Yet it remains to be seen how affective commitment and psychological climate will interact with each other to influence the voluntary turnover intention among employees in the public sector in Ghana. Additionally, that's another word. So all you see is that the person always has sentences that link to each other. The sentences don't stand on their own. The word besides, and then words like additionally, words like and underlying this research gap. Despite, all of words are trying to link words we use as hook phrases that join certain things together. They join. So example, look, aforementioned construct, aforementioned perspective, aforementioned arguments. So all of these are linking things together. They are linking them together. Please keep that in mind. They are linking them together. Okay. That's HR. Let's take last one with marketing and see. So with marketing. Okay. Okay. The argument for technology and relation marketing began as far as back in the 1990s with studies by authors such as Giga and Martin, who researched into internet technology as RM2 as a relation marketing management tool. Information technology has since been recognized as an effective medium. So therefore, IT plays a critical role when it comes to advancing the practice of RM. So this one points out there are studies, every statement, every 50 words, there's a reference. But look at here, there's an argument that's here, and he puts a reference in as part of the sentence. Then he puts an argument in referencing, every 50 words referencing. This is corroborated by marketing researchers who have over the years argued for the role of technology as a necessary condition for the development of effective firm customer relations. It's over the years. Over the years is a chronological argument. So look at it. You have to show over the years. Where are the over the years? 2008, 2007, 2000. Over the years is established. Okay. Now sometimes some of the references and some of the journals, they respect that if you have got references of the same years, you either arrange from the highest, the most recent reference to the lowest, or the lowest to the most recent. So just keep that in mind. So if you have 2008, 2007, 2000, or 2000, 2007, 2008. You see these things. Sometimes they mix them up. They're very good writing. You start from the highest to the lowest, to the most recent to the latest, the one which is most outdated. Okay, so look at this one. The similar thing happens here. So almost every reference, every statement has a reference by it. Every statement has a reference by it. Even when it comes to scaling theory, we mentions one here that covers almost everything here. Okay, so now let's go again to see whether there's another one. Let me take one more. We can take one more and then we can just one more. Okay. Okay. Look at methodology of somebody's work. Let's look at methodology. Because of the lack of theories on stakeholder communication that take into account the dynamic context of projects, this research started without a precise hypothesis or propositions. Instead, the research followed an approach that can be best described as theory elaboration. He gives it that. Compared to testing a theory or developing a theory elaboration is internal elaboration. The empirical data serve to illustrate as an existing general conceptual or theoretical framework. Interesting. This is something new that we are already. It's something like grounded theory. In the theory elaboration research approach, the emphasis is on empirical context in which the general theory is elaborated. So with this empirical context you are delivering, so the research builds on and elaborates on the generic ideas of the information processing model in the context of project stakeholder communication. In doing so, we illustrate how stakeholder communication is managed over the festival cycle of music festival of a music festival and provide explanations for the observed communication modes based on the salience of various active stakeholders. The outcome of the study then continues to talk about. So he's using a salient, using a theory of elaboration approach, and he explains it and provides the references for that. Okay, the case study approach to the data collection was chosen for the following reasons. So you have to choose, when you choose an approach, you have to explain why you choose the approach. First, a case study is particularly suitable for theory elaboration research. Second, a case study is beneficial because it facilitates the investigation of the phenomenon in this real life context, Rowley 2004. Third, case studies are considered suitable for questions on ask how and why in this study. We focus on a single project because it provides unusually revelatory information. So everything that he does in states, there's a reference for it. Everything that he does in states, there's a reference for it. So now, please, I hope you get it. That argument, evidence, illustration. We didn't see much illustrations, but we see that the references are there. The references are there to support the arguments, just for most of the other ones. But depending on where you are writing, illustrations will be more. The references are there to support the argument. So structure. Every literature review has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So an opening sentence or paragraph, then there's a discussion of the literature or a sentence to describe the literature, and then the sources are provided. Then there is the end, the concluding statement. There are different ways you can structure your writing. You can structure it over time. You can focus on theme. You can focus on methodology by looking at the developing, urban against rural, quantitative against qualitative, depending on what you want to write. Now, if you look at this, is a chronological type of writing. The person said that it has changed over time. So almost everything had to show a chronology or time, a time value. I will show you an example from one study already now. So this one, it shows over time. It starts from the late 1990s, it goes to 2004, and goes to the most recent 2011. Then there's an opening sentence here. In the late 1990s, in literature demonstrate the key factors that contribute to unemployment in Africa have tended to change over time. So that statement here is opening statement. Then even this small paragraph, this one is an opening argument for which actually the evidence is provided and then the illustration is done. Here is an opening statement for all the two paragraphs. It's for the arguments that are going to be presented in this section, on this page. On the other hand, by 2004, research discussed that the lack of startup capital or capital for startup initiatives. Okay, so that one too was pointed out and the reference was brought. So all that you see here is that arguments, there's an opening sentence, there is a statement here, there's an argument here, there's a statement here, an illustration, then goes to another argument, a statement here for illustration, goes to another argument, a statement here for illustration, then it ends up with a concluding statement. In effect, unemployment in Africa may be viewed in a multifaceted perspective. It cannot reduce to a single one. Now, if you're writing thematically, every paragraph will have this theme, like I was showing you with one of the papers, that I tried to take you through, and I was explaining to you how the person was breaking the different sections together. I think that was the social emotional wealth theory paper, the one on accounting practices. Different things were being done at different sections of the world. So at one section, they are defining what small business is. Another section, they are explaining what family business is. Another section, they are linking between the two. So those of you who can't remember, let me just show you. So you can structure it thematically. So let's look at it here. Look at this paper I mentioned. Okay, so each introduction has been done. Let's even put the introduction aside. Look at the literature review. It starts by explaining what family-owned business, what they are. It brings the definition of family business are commonly defined in terms of board of directors structure. After that, we define family business in this study. So after reviewing what different people have said, so we define family business as firms that there is a family relationship between the founder, the owner as the founder, and serves as the executive or CEO, and at least one other employee. The role of the family member as a subordinate is important. Then he defines the definition of small business. So another theme is done in another paragraph, definition of the small business. And he continues, here is definition of small business, there is definition of small business. Then he looks at family business and how they implement accounting practices. So then brings you another theme here. Then brings in the social emotional wealth discussions here. And after bringing the social emotional wealth discussions here, he's able to point out what are the things that they would like to look into in their study. Okay, then it comes out to extend the work of parent and grant to explain the introduction of that. So now he looks at somebody's work and then points out, then brings out the final question. The research method is thematically presented. First of all, we talk about what we are going to do. We present the samples, all the discussions about the sample, the reliability, then the construct validity, internal validity, external validity, then the results. And the result, you have got set themes under it. So you can write thematically where you structure your work and then write to fit the themes. So that the themes can come from other people's work you are reading. It can guide you. Okay. Can guide you. Okay, so now let's look at go back to our writing, different types of writing. What I want you to do is that now that you are learning these things, whenever you are reading somebody's paper, you try to identify where he's writing thematically, where he's writing beyond thematically, and he's writing maybe geographically, comparing to geographic regions. Okay, the impact of mobile phones and micro trade, the paper like that. The beginning of the literature review section, it starts with what is trade, then goes to cities of trade, then benefits of trade, impact of trade. So all of them are discussed in paragraphs. Then you can also write methodologically, where you compare the geographic region, developed against developing, country against countries, rural against urban, sometimes the type of data, survey against case study, or the unit of analysis, look at individual, organizational, national, and cross-country or cross-national or global. So you can compare across the different countries. Now, this is the study we were reading earlier, social networking in the workplace. Now, when we read up to here, so let's see the conclusion. Somehow, businesses have to respond to this growing phenomena. However, the question should employers be concerned? What are the potential risks and benefits of social networking in the workplace? And how can businesses address the risk? Okay, so he's pointing out that this is the question he wants to ask. So all the discussion above led to this particular question. However, the question that should However, the questions are: should employers be concerned? What are the potential risks and benefits of social networking in the workplace? And how can businesses address the risk? So that's what we led to. Now, the last part has to do with a good review and a bad review. From by now, you'd have realized that very good reviews have got certain key attributes, and those which are absent of those key attributes are the bad review. For example, somebody starts a study paper and then states sexual harassment has many consequences, and then goes on and says that Adam Kotek and Paddy found that some women students said they avoided taking a class working with certain professors because of the risk of harassment. They also found that men and women students reacted differently. Then it goes again to, it doesn't link, it just goes to Benson's work. Benson and Thompson studying social problems, list many problems created by sexual harassment. Then in their excellent book, the professor Dish and Winner give a long list of difficulties that victims suffered. All of them don't try to link any of them together. There's just summaries of the different papers, summary descriptions of the different papers. That's what it does. All of them are. But the ones which are good review is that the victims of sexual harassment suffer a range of consequences. Then you list the consequences and provide the reference. Then I take, for example, Adam Cottage and Paddy. So then the example becomes based on the list and the inference, the discussion that have been placed across, or the argument that have been placed across already. So the example is based on the argument that have been placed across already. So please, if you are writing, always know that you have an argument. You have to provide your evidence as much as possible, and occasionally you have to illustrate to enhance understanding. Okay, so in effect, literature review is not a summary of available materials without any critical description of components or an annotated bibliography. It is a thorough bibliography. It's a thorough collection of literature that has been analyzed, that has been compared, that has been critically evaluated to produce a write-up. So argument, evidence, illustration, that's one thing you should remember with any attempt to review literature. You will see it in many studies that you are already see it in many other studies. Thank you very, very much.